Okay, in the previous step, we learned uh, what are the variables in Unity and what we can use them for each purposes. In this step, we want to learn what is the function, void, and what are the use cases of these functions. Okay, let's make a new C# script here, and I call the part 1. Okay, and let's go to the Visual Studio. Alright, by default, you will see some contents are here. Look at this, void start and void update by default in Unity. What are these? These are functions, but default functions of Unity. But what matters is they are functions. Functions is, imagine it is a small machine or a small factory. It can has an input and it can return some things to you, or it can be no input and no return, but just doing some processes. Excuse me. For example, here, void, it means this is a function which doesn't have any input or any specific type of, return value. But the name of it is, the start. And here, as you can see, we don't have any input. For example, it can be something like this, but we will leave it something like here. In this part, as far as we mentioned in the previous step, let's define a public integer. Let me do something like this. Okay, let's make a public integer number 1, semicolon, and let's make another integer, public integer number 2. Okay, we want to do something like, and let's make public integer final result. Okay, we will say final result equal number 1 plus number 2. For example, if the number 1 is 1 and number 2 is equal 2, the final result after this process will be 3, or any other numbers. It can be number 4, and it can be 6, so the final result is equal 10. Okay, but if we want to use this function, this order in other scripts, we need to just copy paste this code here or any other functions. But excuse me, we will define another function to just make it get two numbers and make them summer and give us the final number after the process. For example, at this function we will have specific time, a specific kind of a result. So the result can be integer. Integer, we will say do something, okay, and it can has and two inputs as well, integer x and integer y. Okay, here we need to first duplicate here the final result, or it can be integer result. Okay, and now we will say result is equal x plus y. Okay, And finally, it says, okay, you already did your process. Let's return something. Return to me result. Okay? So, at this part, instead of doing the process itself, we will call this function. For example, do something number 1 and number 2. So the number 1 will be x because it is the first value, and the number 2 is y. No need to add plus. We just give it the value as an input. Then it gives us back the result, and we will set the result equal final result. Okay, with this method, for doing this process, no need to make it from scratch in every other functions. We just call this function. So it is the use case of the function. Avoid of repeating same process in every class or every functions. Okay, let's come back to the Unity editor and do something like, let's remove the previous one and add the part 1. Okay, and because it is in void start, it works exactly the first moment of our scene launch. In the future, I will explain what is the difference between void start and void update or other default functions of Unity. Okay, let's make these numbers different. For example, 15 and 12. And now play the scene. The result has to be 27. That's it. It got the number 1 as a 15 here as an x, and number 2 as a 12 and as a y, and it gives us back the result as a 27 here, and the final result is 27. Okay, we can even inside this function we can call other functions, but remember, inside the integer function, after return we need to finalize our code, our function. After return, if we do anything, for example, result is for example x multiplied 2, this line won't work because it is after return. In fact, return, it means, okay, this process is done. Alright, let's make another example here. For example, float multiply by 2, for example. Okay, and in here we will have just float number, and in here we will say, okay, float result 2, for example, is equal a number multiply 2 and return result 2. Okay, and in here we will say, for example, excuse me, let's make another public float here, final result 2. Final result is equal multiply by 2 by, for example, number 1. So it will be like this. I save the scene by Ctrl S, I save the script by Control S and I come back to the Unity. Remember, if you want to test your script, it has to be out of the play mode. So you need to stop the game to after wait to the compiling process is done. After, you need to start the scene again. Look at this. Final result is equal 27 and final result 2 is equal 30. It's equal 15 multiplied 2 and it's equal 30. This is it. These are the simple examples of what are the functions and how we can use them in the beginner mode. Okay, let's go to the next step.